First of all, does anybody have any questions or comments from the minutes from the last meeting?
No.
All right, I actually read them, man, I can't believe you were that, there was a lot to write. The second thing we will talk about is the amending the ordinance, the Appendix B subdivision, Part 5, required improvements and providing for an effective date, providing for a savings clause, and finding and determining that meeting was passed and open to the public as required by the law. You want to address that, Sir Craig?
I'll let Mr. Hurd do that.
All right.
That's all his hard work.
Come on, Dad.
Basically, all this is last month you guys approved the site development code that got placed in. You approved the site development regulations. So the TIA standards that were in there, I just pulled them out basically and put them into the subdivision code, so it makes residential development applicable to this. And I've added an exemption to it for current developments that are occurring that are in future phases that are kind of winding down, like La Pradera, Harris Village, that sort of thing. So there's an exemption in there for those items because those aren't brand new developments, those are just developments that are already present and phasing out. That's the only exemption that's been added. Otherwise, it's all the same as what you approved last month, the site development code.
So we're just adding the traffic impact analysis to the subdivision.
With that small change to the exceptions, yes. And then also, there's also a Scrivener's correction for the inspection fees. State laws changed, we cannot charge the 1% for subdivision construction anymore, so I'm taking that out of this.
So,
It's in the same section, might as well just take it out.
questions?
That's it.
I have, so what qualifies, at what point in a project do you qualify for the exception? I know we haven't met. The one that we saw last week, Windmill Preserve, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
So that was included in their SCP.
Right. So it goes by the three exemptions you approved through the site development code. The additional exemption is, of course, for developments that are in development or in phasing right now, unless otherwise the council's approved something different, like you did with Windmill Preserve through the PDD condition, or if they increase the number of lots in that development beyond what it was supposed to be, then it will trip the requirements. But more than likely, it'll be exempted because it'll be under 100 vehicle trips generated.
So would it be fair to say that anything before Windmill Preserve is exempted?
Yes.
And then anything after? Essentially is-
Yep. Assuming we pass this tonight, it will be.
Okay. Good. The other ordinance, and these will both be public hearings, so they have to stay there. The other ordinance is the amendment to the fiscal year 24-25 budget to reflect the appropriation transfers in Exhibit A. You want to outline those?
Sure.
Craig?
Sure. So we had, the main thing that drove this was the volunteer fire department needs to order a bunch of equipment for the new truck that's coming in. Some of the equipment's coming from Sid and Martin, so that we really didn't need a budget adjustment because we can just issue the purchase order, that'll be funded, but there's a lot of smaller items that they're gonna have to order that they need to start ordering now to make sure they're here when the truck comes in. So what we did is we just did an amendment to their, decided to do an amendment to their budget line item for the contract to put that amount in there. And since I was doing that, I had 3 or 4 other things that have come up that we needed to do, so I figured we'd just stick them all in there at one time and take care of them. So the items that you have, the first one is mayor and council, and some of you, this came up before the election, but because we had our election during the presidential election year, we ended up really almost triple what our normal election cost us because they took the cost of that and divvied it up among the participating agencies. So whereas our annual election cost usually runs somewhere around $3,500, and it's costing us $9,119. So we had to make that adjustment. So that adjustment is in there for $5619. And then, like I said, the fire department contract increases by $53,900. purchase all the things that won't be permanently attached to the truck, the things that are permanently attached to the truck or coming from Sid and Martin's as add-ons to the truck. We'll do that separately. But, so that's, and that was given to us by the fire chief, and you want detail on what those items are, he can definitely let you know about that. But, and then in the administration budget, so we have a professional services line there, and typically each year, it varies. I think last year there was like 45,000 there. This year I only put 18. Of course, I farmed it all up real quick. We used most of it to do 2 drainage projects. We have 2 drainage issues in the city, one on Dyson. I think most of you have gotten phone calls about one time or another. There's corner Dyson and Leland. We actually have a solution for that, and we're actually getting quotes and hope to start it next week. And then we have the one on Celeste where they've come in. So the engineering and surveying and all that to try to come up with a solution to that is kind of eating up that 18,000. So, as you know, we did the RFQ for grant services, and so I had that back. And there's 2 IPOs they attached. One is for general grant services with a not to exceed 7,500, and the other is for the SS4A application, and that's not to exceed 13,000. So I added those. And then as part of the SS4A grant, we have the sign component, which involves going in and updating all the signs to make sure we have proper reflectivity and all of that, but also identifying areas where we don't have signs and we need them. So we had put that in our grant. At the same time, the MPO was doing a countywide grant to do a traffic control device inventory or street sign inventory. So they took ours out and said, just join the counties. So the county determined that our portion of the grant to do the whole city would be 50,000. It's a 20% match, so that's 10,000 is our cost. So I put all that in there. So that raised that line item from 18,000 to 48,500. And then the last one is the police department, and this is going to make the chief go. But for some reason, 3 of their Tahoes just decided to start having lots and lots of issues this year. So in less than 6 months, we have expended the entire vehicle maintenance budget for the police department, and almost 27,000 of that went on 3 vehicles, 3 Tahoes that we had to control. And none of those are scheduled to be replaced this year. That's why they were repaired, because if they were going to be replaced, we would have just parked them and redo. But they're all going to be at least another year before we get that. So they've used all their money. Their new vehicles should start coming in next month, maybe? Month after? 3 more months? Takes that long to get them rigged out? Well, they're at the place to be rigged out, so, but in the meantime, all the other vehicles still have to have regular maintenance things, so I added 30,000 to that. So I have a little breakdown of, just kind of did a snapshot of this. I amended the beginning balance of the budget also, because when we did the budget, we had not done the audit, so I just projected the fund balance. I projected the beginning balance at $6,023,000. After the audit, it was actually $6,869,000, so I made that adjustment. That was an increase of $845. I have not modified the revenue at this point. It's really not far enough into the year to get a real handle on that. So far, all the revenue looks good, even with the payback we had to do on the sales tax. We actually had a benefit there because we actually, that same month in February, ended up getting an extra 80-something thousand. So in the end, we're almost break even where we would have been if we hadn't had to make that payment.
They didn't make another mistake, or a business make another mistake.
Well, a business somewhere else made a mistake and paid about 87,000 of what we should have got to someone else, and so we got that.
So it came back.
So real give and take.
Yeah, and that happens. I mean, it's kind of, it just depends where you, so that was good timing for that. It kind of absorbed a big chunk of that payment back, so that helped. So it just changed the bottom line, but the increase amount's 120, 104. Now we will still do the mid-year we typically do in June or July. At that point, we'll look at the revenues and all that. So this does increase the amount of expenditures, but with the increase in the beginning balance, we still have a net increase in fund balance of $725,000. So,
Anybody got a problem with that?
I don't have any problems, but on the fire contract, was that just when we were getting the truck outfitted, did we just miss that, or is there?
no, it was included in the amount. It's just, I don't think we anticipated that it was gonna happen,
This year?
that we're gonna need it this far ahead, yeah.
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
answer a little bit of that, if you'd like. So the 53,000 is equipment that would need to be purchased this fiscal year, on this budget year. So there's an additional amount of equipment at Siddons Martin because we're purchasing a $2 million truck from us.
Right.
They're also okay with us not paying for that equipment until October 1st in the next budget year. So they can issue that PO for the next budget year. But the 53,000 is from vendors that we have to pay before October 1st.
That makes sense.
It's still within those numbers we talked
Sure.
about. It's just, we
Yeah,
we
time.
weren't anticipating having to fit it in this fiscal year. We were
Right.
figuring picking everything up on
Yeah,
October.
next
So
fiscal
it's
year.
just when they're choosing to get their money.
Right. Yeah, when you buy a $2 million truck, they'll delay their payment on that equipment for a little bit, along with the truck. And the rest of the vendors that didn't sell us the truck want their money now.
Are they still on track to September delivery?
No, they're ahead. We're supposed to be, we're ready for pickup in July 16th.
Oh, wow.
So we'll fly towards the end of July to do a final inspection. It'll go to, it'll be driven 60 miles an hour from Wisconsin to Denton. It'll be there for a few weeks, getting all the equipment installed on it professionally. It'll go from Denton to Killeen for a final make-ready inspection with our sales company, Siddons Martin, and then it will come to Robinson. So probably late August, early September is when we'll see it here at the fire station.
We will probably next meeting start discussing options moving forward on financing on it. Because there's some things before the legislature right now that we might have to get out in front of.
Yeah, it seems that might be a lot of things in the legislature. Okay, anything else?
I had a question regarding us going with the county on the signage. Are we still
Well,
going
see,
to?
it's not the county, it's the MPO.
Oh, that's the county.
No, it's
The NPO. Will we still get the same as if we would have gotten it, if we were not asked to do it through the NPO?
So it's 50,000, you said?
Yeah, our contribution is.
That would be that whether we got it or whether. we
Yeah, I
didn't.
mean, I don't remember how much we had in our budget, but that's what, that's, cause there was a couple other things, we reduced the amount for the street lights, cause I personally thought the engineers had that way too high, so a lot of the street lighting will actually be done by, Encore. So, but, they come back and said they wanted to reduce those, but they're gonna hire an engineering firm, and they're gonna go out at night, they're gonna drive around, do the, the reflectivity and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it will be done using technology, so I think it'll be just as thorough. I don't think we'll get less, it's just, you also get a benefit because I think their budget's like $1 million, so the group that's getting that contract will get the whole contract for the whole county, and we're just one portion of it.
Right, the last thing is a discussion, not really an action item, but beginning of a discussion regarding Hunting Estate Streets.
I think did you put on there the Kimley Horn?
Yeah, we had.
Did I skip one?
Number
Yeah,
four.
we didn't talk about the Kimley.
Oh, yeah, the Kimley Horn.
That's on consent, so we probably
Yeah.
definitely need to talk about that.
So we already said that Craig could go and negotiate this grant consulting contract, so we need to okay the action of, master agreement for continuing professional services with Kimley Horn for grant consulting services and individual project order number 01 for service related to grant acquisition and preparation of the SS4A agreement. And now, you said 7,500 and 13,000 was the numbers that you.
Yeah, there's IPO 1 and IPO 2 that they sent a separate IPO for the SS4A. So, and yeah, that one, number 2, the 13,000 will most likely get spent this fiscal year, the full amount, because we have to get the agreement drafted, get the feds to approve it, and the way the grant was done, it wasn't like we're gonna do this, this, and this. It was like, we're gonna do an inventory of lighting, and then from there, we'll determine what lighting we need. We think it'll cost up to this amount. And then for the roadway safety improvements, it said we were gonna evaluate high accident areas and best for what we're, so that makes the application process a little more complex, because we gotta build into the cost of the engineering and things to do that, and figure out what's gonna be the best, which there's money in the budget to do that, but that's goes beyond my technical abilities, that's why we need to, the problem is, because it's ahead of the grant approval, we can't use the grant funds to pay for it. Once it's done, then we can start charging things off to the grant, but we can't, this part we have to do up front. But since we don't have the engineering department or anything on staff, it just made sense to, and they've done, one of the reasons we picked Kimley Horn is they've done quite a few of these, they've done several of these for Austin and several other cities, so they've got some experience there. So that's that part. The other part for the, just the general consulting for the grant, the 7,500, I don't know how much of that we'll do right now. The first real task I want to ask them to start looking at is potential funding mechanisms for the water plant upgrade. And looking at, as we try to regionalize what's potentially there. My experience working with Work Development Board is you gotta get out about 36 months out ahead of submitting an application. So sometimes you gotta make a trip down there and visit with them and kind of give them the scope of your project and stuff. So the sooner we can start on that, the better, but I don't know that we'll do that whole thing. But the way this master agreement is, they will be available to help us with other grant applications going forward. So one of the things they've talked about is they'll be on the lookout as grants become available. They'll notify us. Now, a lot of grants are going away. If you follow the news, a lot of things are being shut down, so I know the SS4A has been on hold. They've told us proceed with getting ready, but they haven't actually started approving any yet. What we've heard is they're gonna remain, they're not gonna withdraw those, but there was a couple other grants that were already approved that got withdrawn. We didn't get any of those, but the MPO got a couple of them, so some of that's up in the air, but we just wanna, I know this legislative session, they're also talking about throwing more money at water improvements, things that improve water supplies, so hopefully we can get out ahead of that too. So it's just, with the very limited staff we have, we really don't have anybody to be there dedicated to Tri-State, so this kind of becomes that function for us.
Questions, everybody okay? Everybody's good with everything we just said?
I'm good. Previous quick conversation, I asked, you were good with Kimley Horn, you said you were good with them, you're good with the pricing on these?
I actually expected a bigger price on this, this 4A, to be honest. I thought they were gonna come back around 20, so I was like, that's a little better. I didn't wanna go back and say, you sure?
All right, tell us about Huntington.
So, we had some representatives from Huntington Estates here, I believe, maybe October, asking if the city would consider entering into agreement with them or doing something to help with the maintenance of their streets. So, I've had some conversations with Mr. Dixon here about that, and I know a couple of you have reached out to me individually about, with some questions, and I thought it'd just be a good opportunity for us to have for a discussion, have him here to kind of give you an overview of if you wanna do it, what the options are, and from a legal standpoint, what's on the plus side, what's on the negative side, and then we can talk from city standpoint of, what are the potential positives and negatives of it, so. It's not as an action item tonight, just kind of get your input and then give us direction.
Can we hear from him now?
Now, can they hear from you now?
Come on.
Come on up.
He's the attorney, so if he
Let's
says
start,
it's okay, it should be
I
okay.
wanna start there.
You know this story already.
Yeah, the billing started.
It started when I left the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's sort of when he walked out the door.
What he was
at the
thinking
office.
about. he
I was
pressing
thinking about it as I left the office. Obviously, these are private streets, not municipal streets. From what I understand, the proposal is that the HOA continue doing minor maintenance, crack sealing, stuff like that. But that the city effectively act as an insurer for purposes of any major maintenance. That if they have major maintenance, the city will do it. And there's an inherent problem with that, is that we cannot use public funds for, for private purposes. This is a private street, it's not a municipal street, of the city. And so we would be essentially violating Article 3, Section 52 of the Texas Constitution, which bars gifts and grants and other uses of public monies and resources for private benefit. And so that is the problem with that plan. Now, to work on the streets, they would effectively have to become city streets. And there's a lot of practical issues with that. First, the streets don't meet our right-of-way standards. Our right-of-way is 50 foot and not 32. The city, because they were private, they weren't inspected by the city during construction. So we're not sure that they meet the city construction standards, and we probably have to do a lot of core testing to determine that. Another thing that, to me, is that it kind of opens Pandora's box. It's frequent that developers start out having private streets. But eventually, and it's almost like clockwork, the residents end up coming back to the city and saying, you know, can you maintain our roads, our streets? And it's generally because there hadn't been the foresight of the developer to make sure the HOA was setting their fees at a rate that would actually provide for street maintenance rather than just crack filling and stuff like that. And you know, if when you accept private streets out of a development like this, you know, to me, it seems like developers would think, hey, there's really no risk to building private streets because, and they avoid city oversight and rules that way. If the developers were secure in the knowledge that the city's always gonna bail them out. We would have to either waive our right-of-way requirement or procure additional right-of-way. But if the council's wish is to do maintenance out there, these streets would have to become city streets. We'd have to accept them into the city street system for maintenance. It doesn't put them on any, that they would move in just in the priority of wherever they ended up. So the long short of it is the council's legally prohibited from doing this current plan that's on the table of being the stopgap insurer on major repairs. But the council could accept the streets as city streets and then do maintenance on them. Or
was at 6:25. I'm not gonna have any questions. We'll save those for the period. But I wanted, at least we got to hear that to begin with, and then we'll see what questions we come up with. But I appreciate the options and the information, so. All right, with that, I'm gonna adjourn the workshop at 6:25, and we'll start again at 6:30.
We feel like you can push this, we can jump forward to 6:30.
Run, Peter.
Speed up time.
Jeremy's lucky she muted that button a while ago.
I don't know what you're talking about. Possible deniability.
Yeah, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. All right, 6:30. We will call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum, barely. Jerry Friedman was not able to be with us tonight, but our good friend Jimmy Rogers at the end of the table had a wonderful prayer that he actually put on social media if you didn't get to see it. And we're going to ask him to do the invocation and just read it for us tonight. So everybody stand.
Apologize, I am just going to read it. I don't have it memorized by heart, so let us bow our heads. Father, I lift up my city in prayer. I ask that you restore us, bring us peace and understanding to our hearts. Help us to treat each other with civility, dignity, and respect. And in moments of disagreement, may your character shine through us. Guide us to approach difficult conversation with sincerity, compassion, and honesty. I pray that we will seek your will for our community rather than our own desires. May every member of our city work together for the common good, dedicating ourselves to the hard work needed to see your will come to fruition. Romans 13:10 tells us, love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. Romans 14:19, so let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. Philippians 2:14, let each of you look not only at his own interest, but also the interest of others. And in Philippians 2:3, doing nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Father, I trust that you will hear this prayer, and you will move our city accordingly to your perfect will. May we remain united in purpose and committed to living out your love and truth. How good and pleasant is it when God's people live together in unity. Psalms 133:1. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call.
Birch, Finn, McLean, Matador,
Here.
May,
Here.
Rogers,
Here.
Steichen.
Here. All right. Citizens' comments. I'd like to read what we've added to our agenda for the future. The City Council invites citizens to address the council on any matter, including items on the agenda, except public hearings that are included on the agenda. Comments related to public hearings will be heard when the public hearing starts. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The council is not permitted to take any action or discuss any item not listed on the agenda. When called to speak, please state your name and address, and if speaking on a specific agenda, state the item before you begin your comments, please. With that, we will invite Ms. Linda Vaughn from the Chamber of Commerce to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council and the citizens of the community. I'd like to bring you announcements from the chamber. First, our monthly board meeting will be April the 8th, which is next Tuesday, here in City Hall at noon. We've switched that to the second Tuesday of each month instead of the second Wednesday of each month. They are open board meetings. Anyone's welcome to attend. Next, our next quarterly luncheon will be April the 10th at noon at Tajin, and our speaker will be none other than Mayor Greg May. And we will have a business spotlight by Greg May Honda that day. We'd love to have you come out and join us at Tajin at noon. Joining with the other local chambers, we will participate in Cafe Pan Dulce on April the 4th from 9:30 to 10:30 at 510 Austin Avenue. Everyone is welcome to attend that as well. Robinson Food Pantry ribbon cutting this Saturday at 8:30 a.m. We'd love for you guys to attend that as well. We just began working with Fox 44 on something special coming up in July for our community, so we'd like for you to stay tuned about that. Further information coming, I'm sure. Annual membership banquet is July 17th. We are currently accepting sponsorships, silent auction items. You can purchase tickets. We're preparing for that in advance. It will be a casino night and should be lots of fun. And then on September the 10th at noon at the Bellmead Civic Center, we'll be having a collaborative luncheon with the Robinson Chamber and its members and the Bellmead Chamber and its members, and everyone is invited to attend that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we invite up our Fire Chief, Mr. Steve Sullivan.
Good evening. I have just some packets to share with y'all as well.
Pass it down if you want.
Yeah, sure. There's some extras if you want. Just since we're 3 months into the year, I thought it'd be good to just swing by and give you an update on the volunteer fire department. I thought I would start with, on the hills of the new ladder truck. What we'll be requesting next is our next fire attack helicopter. It makes the neighborhood watch anytime there's a fire. They ask why the helicopter isn't around, but that's just an April Fool's joke. We don't actually need a helicopter, as cool as that would be. Just wanted to give you some updates on the fire department. To date, from January through yesterday, we have responded to 262 calls for service. About 60% of those are EMS related. We have responded to 25 fires this year. For the same time period last year, we were at 283 calls, so a difference of 21 calls lower. But we only had 9 fires as compared to 25. I think that is attributed to the windy conditions and the grass fires that we've seen over the past several weeks. There was one day on I-35 where we had 6 grass fires simultaneously between Lorena and Waco that we all worked together. Likewise, in March of 2024, we had about 50 members on our roster, and today we have 71, with 5 more applications pending for our next fire academy. That includes 39 firefighters and 48 state certified EMS providers. Obviously, 48 plus 39 doesn't equal 71, so we have a lot of dual certified individuals on our department as well. We have personnel at our station 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and most weekends as well. Some of that coverage is part-time employment, but most of it is volunteer. We are launching our first fully certified fire academy this coming June, where we will have, we've been working on this since Reese was chief over 2 years ago, and are excited to launch it. We've kind of been improving each academy, but now we have all of the facilities and equipment to be able to do that. So our firefighters will graduate as a state certified firefighter and then be able to pursue their EMS certification as well. So really coming in, we provide all the training that they need, and they could go get a full-time firefighting career job somewhere in the region as well, or anywhere in the state for that matter. We're looking at adding outside departments, inviting other people to be a part of that academy as well to offset the cost, where it really would not cost the department any money whatsoever to even train our own firefighters. And lastly, I just want to invite our council and our city leadership. I've mentioned this to Mayor May and City Manager Leman before, but to basically an open house at the fire station and at our new training field. We'd love to show you all, you provide a lot of resources to us. We want to be able to showcase how we operate and how we steward those resources effectively to be able to provide top-notch fire protection services to you all. So as Jimmy's prayer said earlier, I think the fire department and the council, all of our city members work really well together, and appreciative of the relationship that we have. I don't think there's a better one in the county. So lastly, just to highlight in the packet, the graph is something I send to Mayor Leman or Manager Leman every month that shows our year-to-date calls and last month calls. And the last 4 pages is just an excerpt out of our orientation guide that we provide all of our new members. It gives you our core principles that I thought you might enjoy. That's it.
Thank
Thank you, Chief.
Heads up, Donnie Finn has joined us on the virtual meeting.
Oh, all right. All right, those are only 2 blue cards I have. Were there any citizen comments at this time that anybody wanted to make that aren't related to anything that's on the agenda? Okay, if not, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have 2 items. Number 6, approve the minutes from the March 18th City Council regular workshop, regular meeting. And number 7, consider possible action, which would be approval of the master agreement for continuing professional services with Kimberly Horn and Associates for grant consulting services and individual project order number 1 for services related to grant acquisition and preparation of the SS4A agreement. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 6 and 7.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving right along. So at 6:40, we will open a public hearing to consider and possible action approving ordinance 2025-008, amending Appendix B subdivisions, Part 5, required improvements, and providing for an effective date, providing a savings clause, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance was passed is open to the public as required by law. David Harrell, if you'll, one more time.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. All this is a subdivision change to move traffic impact analysis standards that you approved last month with the separate site development code into the subdivision code. And it adds an exemption to it for current residential developments that are still building and in phases. So if you were to approve this tonight, it would take effect with new development that's coming in. There's also, in the exemptions, there's also a portion within that exemption that the exemption goes away if you increase the number of residential lots past what was originally approved, or if you've approved a different standard. Like, for example, the PDD ordinance that you approved of Windmill Preserve last time, you had TIA standards to that, so it'll be applicable to it. Also, this change takes out the inspection fees, which are no longer allowed to be charged under state law, so I just removed that portion and cleaned it up with this change as well. I'm here for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here that would like to speak on this matter? If not, we're going to close the public hearing at 6:42. Any questions from the council that we haven't already asked?
None.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-008, which would amend Appendix B for the subdivisions Part 5 for the required improvements, as well as provide an effective date as written.
Second?
I second. Or was
Okay.
that you
I don't
seconded?
know, I never do. I'll give it to you. He can have it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, now, we're gonna, at 6:42, now we're gonna open a public hearing to consider action approving ordinance 2025-009, amendments to the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget to reflect appropriation transfers as outlined in Exhibit A of the ordinance. For that, we go to Mr. Craig.
So this is an ordinance to amend the current year budget. I'll just real briefly go over what the amendments are, since we did talk about these in the pre-meeting. So the first is it does amend the beginning balance from $6,023,433 to $6,869,20, which was the fund balance determined by the audit that was completed in March, or in February, actually. There's no change to total projected revenues. We're increasing the election expense line item in mayor and council from $3,500 to $9,119 to cover the additional costs we incurred for the November election, since it was also a statewide and presidential election. We got some of that cost passed on to us. It increases the fire department contract line item by $53,985 to cover equipment that be purchased for the new ladder truck that'll be coming in later this year. Increases professional services by $30,500 to cover grant-related services and to cover the city's portion of a traffic street sign inventory. And then increases the police department maintenance budget by $30,000 due to unexpected significant maintenance on a few vehicles. And it does increase the total expenditures by $120,104, leaving us a new ending fund balance of $6,755,880, which is an increase of $725,483 over the original projected fund balance. And I would be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
All right, anybody else would like to speak on this matter from the public side? If not, I will close the public hearing at 6:45. Council, any questions that we did not address in the workshop? All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2025-009, providing for amendments to the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget to reflect appropriation transfers as outlined in Exhibit A of the ordinance.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we're done with that one. All right, Huntington Estate Streets. We heard from council, but we weren't able to ask questions. So you were you through with the summary that you kind of gave us? Just kind of, okay, so questions that we have for him concerning taking these, either leaving it as is, taking the streets, options, so on and so forth.
You know, all your points that you made were really good, I mean, and sound. And if we were to consider it, and again, would we be able to go in and do some testing on the roads to determine whether they are built to our standards after the fact? I know that's 20 years. How many years, Reese?
I've been out there 12.
12, so about 12 years. So after the fact, I don't know if testing would be something that we'd like, could do to help with that decision. I don't know what council's feelings are about taking on these streets. I know I spoke with Reese and Tom, sorry. In the argument, it wasn't an argument, in the discussion, the argument presented is, of course, they've been paying their taxes the same as everybody else. Unfortunately, the way that the development was intended and how it ended up, this was supposed to be a private gated community. It didn't turn into that. And therefore, they didn't charge HOA fees that were necessary to be able to have major repairs. And I don't believe there's any repairs needed. But anyway, as it sits, that argument is that they paid their taxes the same as anybody else. But yet, that portion of their taxes, they won't be represented. Did I capture that well? So that was a conversation. Again, there's a lot of hurdles and a lot of legality, and I don't want to do something that puts the city in a bind. I think all of your points are valid. But, here we are with this in front of us. So questions, thoughts, that's just me.
Well, the first statement that struck me from all my years in business is, you run yourself down. If we do it once, then we're gonna be facing it. However many more of these there are in town, that becomes first on my mind, is that
Well, actually,
you're gonna set a precedence, and here we go.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I in my conversation, they're not the first one to ask. They're the first one of this type, but we have people asking for the exact same thing on dirt roads, wanting them paved today. So they're kind of last to ask, actually. So there are multiple ahead of them with the same question already.
The second thing in my mind is that, the second thing I heard was the fact they weren't inspected. So we don't know if they were done to the city specs. They asked them to be private, so we don't know where they went down that road. And then, of course, the width issue of the city's 50, they're 30. You said 32, you said 31.
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
30, it's 31 on the plat.
31.
Yeah,
30,
plat's a
30.
31 foot common area.
31, 32. I don't know what the core testing would show. I don't know what, I'm just, and again, this is a question. We're not taking any action on it. I'm just saying that those are kind of the things that stick out to me right off the bat.
Well, and going back to Councilmember Rogers' first question, so I believe the last phase of that subdivision was finished in early '24, maybe late '23. So not all the roads are in there as old as the original section of Hunting Drive. I think that one was probably put in 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. Most of the rest of it's been put in since I've come here, which was 9 years in May. So
Were all of the roads constructed by the same construction company?
No, they were done by two different contractors,
And that's another thing that hadn't been brought up.
so.
The original street and that particular company, if I understand correctly, we've had issues with on other jobs. Is that correct?
Not the original
But-
street.
So it's the last
The
streets,
follow-on.
the other phases.
3 phases, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as what would the Corps would tell us if they're constructed to our requirements, you know, do we have pug base, what's the depth, is it properly compacted and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't change necessarily over time. You know, the surface will wear, but if they were constructed properly, the Corps would tell us that. You know, we would probably need to take cores in several locations and make sure it's consistent. Some of the old streets in the city, when we've done cores in those, we find variability from block to block. I don't know that there we would see that, because it was constructed in, I believe, 6 phases, isn't, I think David Hurley, I think the last phase that they finished was phase 6. So, you know, I think there'll be consistency in that, but, you know, when we are building a street, or we have a developer building a street that we know are gonna be dedicated to us, we require regular inspections at each phase. We also require them to submit all the testing reports, so we get, you know, what is the compaction of the subgrade, what is the compaction of the road bays, how much is the asphalt, the proper thickness and all that. So the Corps would tell us that kind of information. So I think if the council wants to move this direction, at the very least, we ought to take some cores in multiple locations and just verify that, you know, we're not taking on something where 3 years down the road, we gotta go back and start reconstructing sections of roadway.
On the issue of the width of the street, it's at 31, you said has to be 50 with the easement for the city.
So our current subdivision ordinance requires for residential 50-foot of right-of-way.
So now, does that require us to acquire that extra distance by agreements with the owners, by financial purpose, or do we eminent domain, or how does that work, that we become the owners of the easement part?
I think well, I don't know that there's a law that says we have to have the 50. That's what our current ordinance says.
Okay.
We
By
can-
not having the 50, there's some
We can
potential
vary-
issues.
We can vary from our ordinance,
Yeah.
for something that's already in existence.
Okay,
So the street width is at
31.
the correct distance for what we would require.
Yeah, I think we normally require 32 feet, but it's close.
close
So
enough.
so we're talking about, you know, front yard. I wouldn't be comfortable with this unless they were willing to give. There would be no purchase of that additional right of way. And I wouldn't be comfortable with this unless the neighborhood paid for the core testing and all the things that would be required to, because that would have been done in construction at the developer's expense as well. So, you know, and again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate on this both ways, but my thoughts are essentially all it is a 12-year delay in a process that we would have gone through if this would have been a normal development. Is that just a bonehead idea? I guess is the question. Is this unheard of and really something we should stay away from? What are the pitfalls that I don't see? What's the cliff?
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because I agree with you. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. So we do this, kind of like what you said, this kind of opens us up for setting precedents.
Mhm.
So what's the criteria of us saying, we're gonna do it this time,
But not next time.
but not next time, right?
And the thing I worry about is a developer just coming in and
So,
building a private street, knowing that there's no downside, because
so I thought about that,
if it fails, the city's gonna
yeah.
come in and rescue it.
So I was thinking about that on the way up here, actually. And my thought is, whether it's private or public, the road should be built and us inspected and by our standards regardless, right? And if the builder doesn't wanna do that and they wanna build privately, then the answer is no. Is that not an acceptable thing? Cause I'm like you, That does set precedence. It does give a developer an out to just do whatever they want and then leave it up to the citizens, and then they're kind of left.
I'm
The
gonna,
citizens are left holding the bag.
Absolutely.
Essentially.
So it's like, can you enforce, regardless of whether it's private or public, roads have to be built the same manner, same inspections, period.
And at what point is the determining factor, whether it's a minor or major repair? Who makes that call?
You said, if I heard you right, you said that being the insurance factor is not a real option.
No.
It's either all or nothing.
No, that option is off the table. It's either, it's that option of just doing, major repairs, and it not being, it's still remaining a private street. We can't do that. But what you can do is accept the streets as city streets. But again, you've got right-of-way issues, construction, possible issues, and other thoughts, other things to think of.
you know, Pandora's box truly, honestly, has already been opened up, not to the scale in which, we're talking here, but, we've already accepted streets as a city over time that were not constructed at all, were dirt country roads. Juniper, Hicks Lane, Dove, Hahn.
No, Hicks Lane is private.
It is still private? Okay. But the ask is almost the same there too. They've already asked us to do this. So, you know, to the point that you just made there, well, where does that put us with Hicks Lane? Yeah, so that means we did it here. How do we address and answer Hicks Lane when we've already said no there? Now Hicks Lane poses a lot more challenges, but Dove and what's the one that turns into Hahn, Dove, and then it hangs a right, Quill. Those streets are in our inventory now, but they were nothing more than a dirt road driveway that somebody built on their pasture so somebody's kinfolk could have a house on that. They just carved it out. That's how those got there. I bet if we went back and looked, we could probably find a few more. A lot of our rural streets came this way to us, and we're doing maintenance on them now. It's gravel work, blade work. Some of them have turned into chip seal. So we've already opened that Pandora's box. So I'm saying devil's advocate because I want to. I mean, Hicks Lane comes up next, and how do we go back and answer that question? Will they be the next one right behind us? And again, their ask wasn't the first one.
You're absolutely right.
It wasn't the first one. So, and we had that discussion. We talked about it, that there are people ahead of them. So I don't know what the solution is here, but you know,